Alright, this is part two. I'm still on my deck. So, where I left off at it, part one, was um, that doctor that I told you about. Um, she wasn't a doctor. She sent me to a neurologist. And this neurologist in the same building up on the sixth floor, she was a surgeon, neurologist. And she sent me out for 4 tests. And like I told you guys, I have to pay for every time I see these doctors and all these MRIs. And when I went into the room, this lady, I'm moving around because the sun is in my face, but this lady, this neurologist, was so nasty. When I tell you guys, she was the nastiest neurologist I ever seen. And when I went into her office, she acted like she didn't even want to be bothered with me. And she acted like I was a problem to her. And I guess she was probably reading the chart from her friend downstairs that they can't find anything wrong with me. So the first thing that she said was, well, I'm going to send you out for 4 tests. And that was it. And she left out the room and just left me with the nurse. Like, I looked at the nurse and I said, that's it? And at that point, she wasn't a regular doctor. She was a neurologist, specialty doctor, which I had to pay more co-payment for her. I think her co-payment was $50. So, okay, I left. And at that point I was getting fed up with this MS, man. I was getting fed up with all these doctors I was going to. So then when I went to the radiology place in the area that I lived in, which I told you I kept all my appointments and all these doctors were surrounding where I lived at, I went there to find out about all 4 of the tests and how they take your insurance information and everything. I never forget it. The woman told me, she said, well, the 4 tests that she's asking for, the first one of the tests were like $59, that I had to kick out of pocket. The next one was $105 that I had to kick out of pocket. And the third test was like 700 and no, it wasn't 700. It was $656. The third test was $656. And then the last test that she told me to take was $800. It was close to $900. It was like $849. And this is after my insurance company I always call it, did their little magic trick. But after they did their deductions, this is what I was responsible as a patient to pay out of pocket, all 4 of those tests. So at that point, I had started putting stuff on credit cards. I had started maxing my credit cards out. I had already took all the money out of my bank account. Like, I was just at that point, and I wasn't even in 2020 yet. I was still in 2019. And no, I was heading to 2020. I was actually in 2020 when I got these tests done. I'm sorry, I was in 2020 because when I got diagnosed at the end of 2020. So it was the beginning of 2020 is when I went to her. And then she says, so I went and got 2 of the tests done that I could afford. I put on credit cards. And the 2 that I got done was x-rays. They weren't MRIs. They were x-rays. So I got an x-ray of my knee, an x-ray of the lower of my back. So I calls back up there and I says, hey, I got the test done. What's my result? So instead of the doctor coming to the phone, the neurologist, she sends her nurse to come tell me. Matter of fact, not even the nurse. I'm sorry. It was the secretary. She tells the secretary to tell me that everything came back fine, but she says in her nasty way, because you could tell the secretary didn't want to even tell me what she said, because I found that out at the end, that she said, well, you still got to take the other test. And she kind of said not to call her back until you took all 4 of the tests. But she's not realizing that I didn't have the money to take all 4 of these tests. It took me time to get this money together. So then when I got the 2 lesser ones, everything came back normal. So when I took the third test, which was like $600 something, that comes back normal. Then the 4th one comes that I took was the $800 one, almost $900. I went into the office. I made an appointment because I was sick of her not giving me answers after I took all of these tests, and I'm still getting nothing. So I goes into her office and made an appointment, paid a co-payment, you know. So she comes into the room. She seemed like she had an attitude with me because I came in there and she was only in that room, I want to say, not even a minute. And she told me, now this time she had the answer too of the brain, no contrast, still no answer. Only thing she said to me is I had a cyst on the top of my spine. And guys, please don't question me. I don't know what the millimeters were, but it was very small. It was like a dot of like an ink pen. But that was MS. And let me tell you something. She was a neurologist, but she was a surgeon. And so when I found that out, I called her back up and I said, because she sent me to physical therapy. Now, mind you, 3 physical therapies now. But this physical therapy, I stayed with this woman 3 months. I stayed 3 months of physical therapy with this woman. And I called the doctor up, the neurologist, and I said to her, I said, so if you're a surgeon, can't you just go in there and fix it? Like go in there and just surgically remove it? And she gonna try to tell me where the cyst sits at, that she could not go in there to fix that situation. Because at that point, I thought maybe I just had a cyst with a with a like a millimeter. And when I went to physical therapy, the young lady who did my physical therapy, she was so sweet. She did the physical therapy and she was like, oh my God, you got a tumor or cyst or whatever pressed up against your spine. And she even said to me, I don't think that is what is your problem, because as I was going to physical therapy, she was monitoring me from the time I came in until the time I left physical therapy. I'm talking about for the 3 months. And she said, Miss Williams, you're not getting better. You're actually getting worse. And it's very seldom that I get patients that's getting worse. She said, something's wrong. I don't think it's this tumor or cyst or whatever it was called. She said, I don't think it is. I think it's something else wrong with you. So, of course, my 3 months went up. I ran out of insurance where they stopped paying, and then I had to pay the co-payment. I ran out. So I knew at 3 months I was done with the insurance for us as concerned. And then another thing, the insurance people start calling me because they put a caseworker against me because I had maxed out my MRIs for that year for insurance. Anybody know insurance, you know that it's a cutoff to the insurance and it's cut off to all these MRIs I was getting done. So I had a caseworker. So that means anytime that I needed to get something done, I had to go through my caseworker. And she had to approve the next MRI. So, okay. So, I still never got an answer. So I goes back to that doctor, not the doctor, my primary doctor again. And she read all the information. I said, you read it? She's like, oh yes, that's it, yeah. So I asked her if she could give me an extended leave of absence because at that particular time, it was getting worse than it was ever getting. It was getting worse. And she was like I told y'all before, giving me such a hard time. She wouldn't give it to me. She said, I can only give you 30 more days and that's it. You're going to have to go back to work. But not knowing that something was really wrong with me. So finally, she gives me another 30 days, which I was gone for 2 months. And then I went home, and I never forget, I sat in the car, and I cried so bad. Because at that point, I was so broke. I had maxed out all my credit cards. I had no more money. I was living check to check. I had a mortgage to pay. I had a car payment to pay. I had insurance to pay. I was strapped at that point. And then I had the insurance company that I had, every time I needed something done, I had to go through them to get anything approved because I had racked up all these bills through the insurance company in the last 2 to 3 years. And they're like, you know, you got to figure out what's going on. And finally I had a conversation with my sister. And I was crying to my sister that I was giving up and that I couldn't do it anymore. And it was just too much on me. I said, I don't know what else to do. And then my sister calls me back. She says, hold on. Don't give up. Hold on. I know a friend that works at one of these hospitals downtown, which I'm going to tell you, it was Johns Hopkins Hospital. She says, I got a friend that works down there that I can get you connected with to try to find out what was going on with you. Just don't give up. Let me look into it. All right, so I'm getting ready to go to part 3. So don't forget, share, like, comment, and follow my page for part 3. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. I'll give you part 3.